My parents were in the flour milling business. My uncles and aunts, my grandfather, all in the flour milling business. I remember walking home on a Friday night with my father from the synagogue and getting into our home with candles burning on the table, and my mom being dressed in white because that was the customs for Friday night, and my little sister, who was 6 years younger than I am, standing there, and our father blessing us. I don't know whether you're familiar with that. You put their hand over your head and bless you. Those are particular memories that I have from childhood, that other than day-to-day school and playing and the flour mill and so forth. Among my friends, I had a couple of Jewish boys, but other than that, Hungarians, Serbians, that were all friends, and never had any difficulty with, not only difficulty, nobody even talked about the fact that, hey, you're Serb or you're Hungarian or whatever it is. And certainly as far as the school is concerned, in grade school, never heard from teachers a remark about your ethnicity or something like that, So it was a nice life. And I remembered the army, the German army, and their Hungarian collaborators together marching through the town. And to me, that was frankly an exciting thing. There was all these soldiers marching through the town. I didn't realize the implications or the gravity of the situation. In the spring of '42, the authorities took away our flour mill. They were confiscated, and my whole family, my little sister, my mom and dad, we had to move into my uncle and aunt's house, and we lived there after that. It's 1944. I'm in grade 7, or in third grade of gymnasium, as they were called in Europe, and it's Passover, and all of a sudden my mom says, "Give me your jacket," because we were supposed to wear a jacket every day to school. And on the jacket she sewed on a big yellow star. And then she told me that from now on, whenever I go out on the street, wherever I go, I must wear this jacket with the star. So you can imagine going back to school, walking into the classroom with this yellow star. There are only 2 of us left because the other 2 kids, for some reason or other, were no longer there in class, whether they quit or something happened. But there were just the 2 of us with this yellow star on, debating and the jokes and all of that. And of course, the fact that whatever the kids said, the teachers never said, well, stop it, or made some remarks as to restrain these kids. So that was, then it started to become very troubling and difficult as far as I was concerned. And I came home from school, my mom and dad, and I remember clearly, this thing at the table, and right away I saw that there is something wrong. And I said, "What's happening?" And my dad said, "Well, we just got orders that we were going to be relocated. We're going to be relocated somewhere east, and but don't worry, you and your sister are going to go to school there. Mom's going to look after you. Probably I'm going to have to work somewhere, but don't worry about it. Things are going to be all right. But we have to leave tomorrow." Got to the railway station, and I expected to see a train, the kind of train that we took to my other grandparents who lived about 50 km away. Instead of that, they had boxcars, cattle cars. All of us packed into these boxcars, men, women, children. I remember packed in, literally, particular memory, like somebody being lifted up in a wheelchair into the boxcar, and the wheelchair taken away. And these kind of small things. My sister and I, fortunately, got a place to sit down. First couple of hours didn't have any problem because my mom, being mom, she brought food with her. But then in a few hours, a problem came up. Somebody had to go to the bathroom. Where is the bathroom? Is there a curtain? Is there a container? Nothing. We were in that boxcar for 2 days and 2 nights. No food, no water, no hygienic conveniences whatsoever. You can imagine the crying, the screaming from babies. I was terrified. Eventually, the train stopped. The doors were flung open. I looked out, and there was this yard. That's what I would call it, graveled. And in the far away, I could see fence and some buildings. And this yard was fairly empty, but on one side, all of a sudden, a whole bunch of pajama-clad guys, they had pajamas on, blue and gray striped pajamas. They started coming by with some SS soldiers, and they started screaming, everybody out of the cars, leave your packages inside, you'll get them later. Men and boys into one column, 5 in a row, fast, they started screaming and going to these doors and trying to pull people out. The chaos was horrifying, People were screaming, babies were crying, mothers didn't want to part. It was just terrible. So we're standing in this column, and then this column started to move, and I saw this one SS soldier standing in the front with maybe 5 or 6 other SS soldiers, and some of these pajama-clad guys standing in front. And pretty soon, my line came up to him. I looked at this guy. I can't remember how he looked, but he looked at me. I swear to you, for 2 seconds, he looked at me and he said that way, just with his finger, never said a word, never asked me anything, nothing at all. He just pointed that way. There was a whole bunch of guys already there. My dad, I saw him come next to me. Again, I grabbed a hold of his hand. My mom and my sister were in the women's column. What happened to them, I don't know at that time. Never said goodbye, never kissed them goodbye, never thought about anything, Just stood there. Eventually, we were taken again by these prisoner uniform guys with a couple of German soldiers with submachine guns, taken into a large barrack beyond this fence that I saw, told to undress. Our body hair and all our hair was shaven, went into a shower, hot shower for a while. There was shower heads right through the whole building, just shower heads, and the hot water came down. Didn't have any soap or anything. All of a sudden the doors opened on the other side, and we walked out in the open. It was June, so it wasn't that cold, but I remember being wet, and outside there was 2 long tables piled high with the same blue and gray pajamas. And I got a pair of pants and a jacket and a little round hat and a pair of klompen, the wooden shoes that the Dutch wear. First night, second day, I was a fairly rambunctious kid. I walked out, and outside there was a street, literally, with these barracks, row after row on both sides, and these pajama-clad guys walking up and down. And I accosted a young guy who looked about my age, maybe a couple of years older, and and wanted to know where I am. So he told me, well, you're in Poland, which meant that I went from Serbia, which was now Hungary, from Hungary to Czechoslovakia to Poland. And this place, he told me, this is Auschwitz. And I asked him, well, fine, where's my mom and my sister? And he looked at me and he said, well, how old is your sister? And I told him that she was 8. Oh, he said, well, then they're over there. And he pointed to a big red brick building with chimneys belching smoke. And what I didn't understand, he explained to me that people were sent into those places, told to undress. Women's hair was shorn. They used it for making felt. And they too were sent into a room with shower heads on top, the same way as we weren't told that they're going to get a shower. And then they closed the door on them and they were murdered. And I went back to my barrack and I said that to my dad. That's what I heard. And my dad said, don't believe it. It's not true. It can't be true. These are German people. They're civilized people. They don't do things like that. And it took us literally a week until we started to really start to believe that this happens. We had to build our own living accommodations, if you can call it that, because what it consisted of is basically a deep ditch into the ground, about 6 foot deep, which we covered with wood, and a triangular roof on top of this ditch, which was then covered with all of the earth that we dug out, a door in the front, a window in the back, and 200 people lived inside this thing. This was our barrack. And we went to work to build a huge underground factory which was supposed to be a factory to build airplane engines for a huge company called Bayerische Motorenwerke. People don't know the name in Canada until you explain to them that Bayerische Motorenwerke are now a major existing company who only use their initials. Bayerische Motorenwerke, BMW. The work was horrendous in the fact that there were no safety precautions, 12-hour shifts. For food, we got a soup in the evening with a piece of bread, and then you had to make a decision whether you're going to eat that piece of bread right away or you're going to keep that piece of bread for tomorrow morning. But then you also had to worry about the fact that where are you going to put that piece of bread, because your best friend, your very best friend, would steal that piece of bread from you if he could. So most of the time you kept it under your head while you slept. I survived, and I'm here for one reason only. My dad was with me. He looked after me, he tried to protect me. He gave me his last little piece of bread and said, I can't eat anymore. And I looked back on it and I said, how could I have accepted it? But it's terrible, you think about it. 9 days before liberation, my dad died of typhoid fever. First he became sick, and there was nothing I could do. A couple of days later, the loudspeakers came up from the towers. There were these guard towers all around, saying that this camp is going to be burned down. And those people who can walk out. There is a train and you can board the train. It'll take you to, quote, safety. I was pretty sick by then, and but I crawled out, literally, got into these coal cars. There are no roofs on them, in which they carried coal to wherever, the electric plants or something like that. Again, crowds of people in this car. Eventually the train started going, and after a while, all of a sudden we noticed that on the parallel track next to us, a German armor train went same speed, the same direction, exactly side by side with us. And it didn't take long until I saw American plane start to circle around, went away, and maybe 20 minutes later, a whole squadron of American planes came and started shooting at this armored train, except that the armored train was 5 feet away from us. Of the 3,000 odd people who were on this train, I think 700 of us survived. I was liberated in Dachau. I was taken to the main camp of Dachau. I was liberated on April 29th. I came to Canada in 1947 as part of the group of first 1,000 Jewish orphans who were allowed to come to Canada. And the rest is history.